Thank you so much. That was a great, inspiring talk. And Traci, I'm going to put you on the spot for a moment. How many AASP conferences have you been to right now? 27. 27 AASP conferences our president-elect, shortly president, has been to, which is incredible. That means your first conference, you were about 6 years old. That's incredible. Fast start. In all seriousness, I know I had the opportunity to give a presidential address a couple of years ago now, and it seems like yesterday. And on behalf of Amy and myself, that how grateful we are and thankful we are. Your years of service, your knowledge of the board, your passion and commitment to help this organization be better for the future generations is an inspiration. And so it's really an honor to have you come up on stage and give us your presidential address. Dr. Traci Statler, everyone. Thank you.
He's not going to make me cry. Okay. Where's Angie? Okay, so I think we've got the keynotes for next year. So coach, athlete, consultant relationship. Bullying. And technology, preferably VR. Okay, cool. We're good. Thanks. I'm out. Awesome. Well, thank you, Penny. Thank you for saying yes originally, and thank you for sharing that with us. It's always an honor to be in the same space as you and to breathe your oxygen, actually to breathe your carbon dioxide. But thank you. I appreciate you being here. So thank you for that. This is surreal. As Angus said, this is my 27th AASP conference. I've missed one in that time frame, and I remember sitting where you actually, I remember sitting literally in the last row a lot of those years and looking up here at the people doing this and thinking to myself, yeah, not a chance. That'll never be me. No way. So being up here is really a surreal and incredibly difficult moment. John Amici talked about this the other night, how this was the presentation for him that he had worked on more than any other. And I can absolutely echo that. I spend a lot of time prepping for my lectures, for the talks that I give, for any sort of presentation that I do. But I think this one I actually prepped for longer and harder and revamped and redid than any other I've ever done, including my doctoral dissertation. So for those of you that know Keith Henson, don't tell him that. But yeah, this is a crazy experience because the task of the presidential address is to present your strategic vision. And your strategic vision is a very future-facing sort of idea. It's where are we going in the year that you have in this space. And you're doing this to an audience of your heroes, your mentors, your colleagues, your friends, your students. So yeah, no pressure there. But the odd piece about this is that the presidential address talks about, my personal vision, but we're not an autocratic organization. This is a democratic organization. So my personal vision is just one small piece of what the organization's vision needs to be about. So we are delimited by, structured by, and guided by our organizational mission, the here and now of who we are and what we are trying to accomplish. That's our strategic plan. And as painful as it is and as difficult as it is to create a strategic plan, I am incredibly grateful, one, that we're done with this new one, but that we have it to serve as a guiding structure for what's to come for this organization for the next 4 years. I'm also pretty happy that the things that are important to me turned out to be big rocks, as I like to say, in that strategic plan, so at least I can feel like I can take ownership of some of those things, even though they're the things that the organization really said you want to do. As I'm prepping this talk, I'm thinking to myself, I gotta be perfect. I gotta do this right. Dang, I've been here for 27 years. I gotta do this thing right. And anytime I start thinking about being perfect, I start thinking about Ken. I hear Ken's voice in my head. And for a lot of you, you know exactly where I'm going with this. But for those of you that haven't had the privilege of hearing the voice of Ken Ravizza in your head, I found a really good clip. This is off of his Twitter page, which in and of itself is a shocking experience that Ken Ravizza had a Twitter page. Just mind-boggling. But there's a video clip that I want to share with you, and this is literally what has been going through my head for the last 3 months. Do I press the button or it just goes? Thank you.
Are you that bad an athlete that you have to feel great to perform well? I ask athletes that question all the time because I want them to look and say to me, yeah, I have to feel perfect, I have to feel just right, I have to be the dominator. No, you're not that bad. You can get it done. Feeling good is overrated, and a lot of it at times is your belief system that you've got to have the confidence in yourself that you can get it done, whether you have your B game, your C game, your D game, because you're a competitor and you're going to fight, you're going to claw, you're going to battle in getting it done. And that's what it's about.
So that's what I have in my head right now. That plus the personalized version, Trace, quit your bitching. Pressure's a privilege. Come on. Suck it up. Do it. You got this. Go be you. Gotcha. That's Ken. That's what I have in my head right now. So I'm going to suck it up. I'm going to deal. Pressure's a privilege. I'm going to own this. And even if I don't have my A game right now, man, I got a hell of a C game going. So I'm going to work it. Like many of us in the room, we are lucky enough to be shaped and influenced by those people who trained us, by our mentors. And when we're confronted with those tough situations, whether they're challenging situations or we've got riddles that we've got to solve or mysteries in front of us that we cannot figure out, we ask ourselves, what would so-and-so do? And one of my go-tos is, what would Ken do? What would Ken do in this situation? And then I hear his voice in my head. And that was the influence for a lot of how I'm structuring the remaining portion of my talk tonight. I'm really, really, really lucky that Ken Ravizza's voice is one of the dominant voices in my head. So I figured what better way to honor his legacy than to share my vision and my vision of how we will interpret the strategic plan for AASP through his mottos, through his sayings, through his Ravizza-isms. And the beautiful thing is there's so many of them to choose from. Beautiful, as Ken would say. So here's just a portion of them. Seriously, there are some colleagues of ours who have created a master list of all of the Ravizza-isms. To date, I have counted 77 of them. And those are just the ones that we can remember off the tops of our heads. So attitude is a decision. One of my personal faves. Have a good shitty day. Bring yourself to the dance. Give 100% of whatever you got. If you got 70%, give 100% of your 70%. Flush it. That's a big one. That one has some traction. That one has stuck for sure. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. Pressure is I can't say that one. Pressure is a privilege. I've said that one a couple of times here tonight. Compensate and adjust. So what? Deal with it. I think I like Mark Shapiro's version of this one better though. I'm not going to say it, but yeah. So what? Deal with it. It's time to stand naked from the gods. Stay naked before the gods. I come back to Ravizza-isms time and time again in my life. In my teaching, anybody who's ever been in my classroom, you know I use Ravizza-isms all the time. I use them in my consulting work with athletes. I use these in arguments with my husband. But here's the tricky thing. You do that for long enough, and your husband starts using them back with you. And then you just got nothing to say. But I have even used these to get myself out of speeding tickets with police officers. And I will leave it to you to figure out which ones really work for that. So if you want more details, you got to come talk to me later. So why wouldn't I use Ravizza-isms to shape my vision of where we're going to go into the future with this wonderful organization? So with Ken's voice in my head, pressure is a privilege, man, you got this. I want to share my strategic vision for AASP in the next year or two. Like many, I believe that having a strong philosophical foundation that underpins everything you do is really critical to ground your actions in whatever direction you're going to go. One of my philosophical orientations as it relates to leadership is the idea of servant leadership. I am very much about servant leadership. I don't envision my role as a leader to be the person out in front. I envision my role to be the person who is supporting the amazingly talented and passionate people that are working with me alongside of me. My goal as the president of this organization, which still feels really friggin' weird to say out loud, but my goal is to help the amazing people of this organization push forth the great and challenging and hard things that we have identified for ourselves moving into the future. Hearing what Penny's talking about, taking on some of those challenges, they're gonna be hard. They're gonna be difficult. But yeah, that's the way they should be. They should be hard, because if it's easy, we would have done it already. It's supposed to be difficult. So let's embrace the difficulty and figure out what are our big rocks. What are the big rocks that we need to put into our jars first? What are the main things that we need to focus on and really, really start working on to move this organization, or continue moving this organization in the direction that it needs to go? Like I said, I am incredibly, incredibly grateful that my big rocks, so to speak, actually aligned with the strategic plan. I created this presentation before the strategic plan was done, and I'll tell you, I sat in that room saying to myself, I hope this comes to the top. Hopefully this is what we're gonna work on, and thankfully they did. So for the next 20 minutes, I am going to share with you what I envision to be two of those key big rocks. That is not to say that there aren't lots of other big rocks or other little rocks or other medium-sized rocks. These are just the two big rocks that I think I am going to really focus on and shepherd and get people behind to try to move this forward. I'll show you where those align with our new strategic plan, and most importantly, because having a plan without having action is ridiculous, I will show you how we are going to start actively engaging those ideas so that we can have some movement by the time Scott comes up here next year, okay? Oop, wrong button. I just wanted you to see Ravizza again. There we go. So if I have to pinpoint one overarching theme that sort of ties those two big rocks together for me, it's this idea that AASP has a really long-standing tradition and a solid tradition of operating as a fairly effective internally focused organization. We've taken really strong focus, really good care to take care of our internal stakeholders, our membership. So things like having our academic focus, creating opportunities for the sharing of research and ideas, for professional development of our younger membership, networking initiatives, projects, structure focused on helping us as the professionals. In the last couple of years, that focus is starting to shift a little bit. We're starting to be more outwardly focused. So for example, the recent initiatives on certification, on revamping certification, on improving our professional practice standards, some of the PR and outreach things that we're doing. Our focus has started to shift from just being really focused on us to now turning and looking outwardly and saying, how can this help these people? So I really liked how John Amici talked the other night about who are your true stakeholders. We've spent a lot of time focusing on us as the true stakeholders, and I love that we're starting to change that vision more outwardly towards our external stakeholders as well. But this change, like any change, can be really difficult, particularly for those who are comfortable with the status quo, with where we have been. Change is challenging. Change can be perceived as threat, but I would argue that change is necessary to avoid stagnation. I do not want this organization to become stagnant. I want us to continue growing. I want us to continue learning. I want us to continue becoming even more relevant than we can be. Okay? I want us to keep moving forward with that. I would posit that we don't need to have a dualistic, I lost the word, two-ended focus. We're not an or. It's not internal or external. I would argue that we are absolutely an and, that we can do both. We've got the time. We've got the passion. We're working on getting the resources to be able to expand our bandwidth, to focus on us as an organization internally, but also turn that bandwidth looking more externally as well. So my big rocks are embracing the hard work that needs to be done to help those external stakeholders better understand who we are, what we do, how we do it, and most importantly, how we can be a benefit to them, how we can help them. And this is where those Ravizza-isms really come into play. One of the most powerful and earliest Ravizza-isms I was introduced to is this idea of putting the hay in the barn. My first semester as a master's student in Ken's program, my first required textbook reading, and this is how he introduced it to us, was The Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman. Now as an educator, I realize there's no way that's a textbook, but it is a very impactful book. For those of you that have never read that, go and find a copy of it. You can find it used, it doesn't matter. I would argue that even a used copy is better because then you can see somebody else's interpretation of that book. But the main premise of that book is about the idea that we've got to do the work. We've got to put the hay in the barn. We've got to chop wood, carry water. That very philosophical Zen idea. That the hard stuff doesn't happen overnight. That the things that we're going to talk about, the things that are going to be revealed to you in the new strategic plan that will structure the organization for the next 4 years, these are hard things. They're difficult challenges that we're going to confront to move this organization in a positive direction, in a more positive direction. We're already positive. But that we've got to put the hay in the barn. We've got to take some time to set the foundation to accomplish the desired outcomes that I think we can all get behind. The strategic plan does this, and as challenging as they are, the benefit of a strategic plan is that it identifies the outcome goal, but then it also does a really nice job of setting on-the-way targets for how we're going to work on that. And that's where I think we need to really structure our focus. We need to be where we need to be when we need to be there. And where we need to be right now is right here. We are entering the first year of a 4-year strategic plan. As Amy has described in a couple of the presentations she's given so far, we've accomplished some pretty major big rocks from the previous strategic plan. Things like the creation and the rollout of the CMPC exam, to ethics modifications, to conference-related improvements, things that we're seeing evidenced here this week, to actively and intentionally promoting diversity, competency, and this idea, and supporting training around diversity, much better than we have in the past. And sidebar on this for a moment. On this note, I would like to personally take a moment to congratulate all of the newly minted AASP fellows, but specifically highlight this mark of distinction for one. Margaret, where are you? Margaret Otley? Can I have you stand for a moment? Do y'all know why you're clapping for Margaret right now? Margaret Otley is not only an amazing friend and colleague, but she's also the first African-American member to be named an AASP Fellow. Well deserved. We would not have been able to attain the big rocks of the last strategic plan without having gone through the process, without having to have been where we needed to be when we needed to be there. And there's a struggle in that sometimes, is that we want the outcome. We're no different than the athletes, the people that we work with. We want the outcome. We want the end product. We want it now, especially in our society today. We are an end product focused society, but it takes time to get there. We've got to be where we need to be when we need to be there. And right now we are at the very beginning stages of some really new big rocks. There is one sort of leftover medium rock that I think still exists though, and that's what's on the slide right now. We are not done with CMPC certification. That was a huge rock. That was a boulder from the last strategic plan. And the fact that the exam has been rolled out right now doesn't mean we're done with that. There's still work to be done with that. We are in the process of getting NCCA recognition on this. That'll take a little bit longer, but I'm not letting that one go. We're going to keep that rolling. And we've got to do a good job of taking where we are right now, being where we need to be when we need to be there. Where we need to be right now is better helping all of you feel more prepared for this exam. If the indication of the number of people sitting in the sessions this week about CMPC preparation is any indication, we desperately need this. So one of my medium-sized rocks is to not let this one go. We're going to create more conference programming. We'll work with Angie to make sure that we've got some really good conference programming and webinars and training series to help us feel more confident, more comfortable, more capable in being able to sit for that exam and be successful in that exam. We've already started and are pretty far along on a preparation textbook that highlights many of the areas that you'll need to be familiar with in order to be successful on that exam. So this medium-sized rock is not going away. Like the pebble in my shoe, it will be there every day to remind me that we are going to do this stuff. But I want to move forward to two of those huge big rocks that are new for this next strategic plan. Marketing the CMPC and the organization. Marketing and branding who we are. There's been some work already started on this. We're really good at knowing what we do. We're really good at talking to ourselves about what we do. I've been to 27 years of conferences where I've learned about how great we are at what we do. We're not very good at telling other people what we do. We struggle sometimes having a consistent and marketable message around who we are and what we do. I would argue that marketing and branding is the next logical step to help us shift this focus from purely internally driven to much more externally driven. There's already been some pretty impressive work done on this. We've already formed a task force, and the CMPC Marketing Task Force is a coalition, if you will, of strategically placed AASP members who already have really good connections with some of our external stakeholders, along with AASP's PR and marketing, or PR group, the Rosen Group. And those are like two pieces of the Venn diagram. So we know what we do, we know how we do it, we know how we can talk to other people about it. We've got a PR arm that can push that message out to the relevant parties. What we need is the help to make the message sticky. If you've never read the book Made to Stick by Chip and Dan Heath, I highly recommend. We need to make our message sticky. We need help with marketing and branding of that sticky message to our stakeholders. The strategic plan outlines a pretty solid plan for how we're going to try to accomplish this. And I apologize to our treasurers in the room, but it's going to cost some money. We've tried over the years to do this cost effectively. We've tried to do it ourselves. We've tried to figure out for ourselves how we can do this best. Yeah, I think that boat is spinning in circles. I think it's time for us to ask the real experts about this. Know what you don't know. We need some help in doing this and doing it right. The purpose of this is then to get that help so that we can create new, sticky, better materials. And that not only helps push the message out to our external stakeholders, but that also helps all of us in this room, because we don't have to then self-create those materials. There's an organization behind us that helps us, that supports us, that lifts us up, that helps us push that message. And it gives us some guidance, some structure on how to do that. So here's the reality check, though, that comes with that. Again, going back to that philosophical orientation that I have about being a servant leader, I think we are doing a disservice to both our internal and external stakeholders if we manage to make this big rock work, and if we manage to get a really sticky message going. I think we're doing a disservice to both ourselves and our external stakeholders if we then create the need but don't effectively have the personnel to match that. So my next big rock is about program recognition. There's some laughter in the room because everybody remembers Kent saying, "This ain't Disneyland." Okay? This is hard. This is going to be a contentious discussion. This is going to be a challenging thing. This is going to create some consternation in the room, particularly for those of us that are grad program directors. This is going to take some work. But if we successfully grow the market for our services, I would argue that is absolutely our responsibility to proactively train people to be ready to provide those services. And if we're not doing that in a consistent way, in a way that mandates at least a basic bar of what that service should look like to provide service in an effective and ethical way, then we shouldn't be in the business of creating that in the first place. This has traditionally been a pretty organic process. Our graduate training programs have sort of emerged out of what the need was. And they've been put together, and they've been amazing. Trust me, I'm a product of this organic process, as most of us in this room are. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think it's time for us to get comfortable being uncomfortable with the fact that we can do this better, that we can absolutely be better in the way that we train our graduate students. And if you're a professional in this room right now and you're calling bullshit on this, yes, I just cursed for those of you that were trying to keep track. If you're saying that's not true, our grad programs are awesome, I would challenge you to talk to some of the students who are here. We've got some great grad programs, but we've got some that are struggling. We as an organization have got to be better about not only setting guidelines, but helping us raise the bar and meet those guidelines. So the idea of graduate program recognition, I think, is an important one. It's an important step, and it's the rational, logical, and ethical step behind what we've already done with CMPC certification. It's the next step. We've got to make sure that we are training those folks to be able to meet the bar that we've set. That's our responsibility. That's our professional responsibility. And yeah, this ain't Disneyland. This is gonna be hard. But the really good news is that there's already some amazingly talented people starting to work on this, starting to investigate this, starting to figure out what might this look like, okay? Now, I wanna throw a caution in here with the couple of minutes I have left. I'm not talking about there being an official AASP Gold Star for great graduate programs. I am talking about there being guidance for graduate programs that specifically train practitioners to become CMPC. That is not every program in this room, nor is it intended to be. I want to start with the low-hanging fruit. The low-hanging fruit here is that we've got a tangible, marketable thing. Let's work on being able to create people who are qualified to do that, and that in no way diminishes or minimizes those who are doing unbelievably amazing work at Research One research-focused institutions. Can you do both? Possibly. But the certification, this idea, not certification, the program recognition isn't about recognizing great research programs. It's about recognizing programs that teach you how to become a CMPC. That's it. I want to caution us not to conflate that into something bigger than that, okay? But like I said, there is some good news that we are already starting to look at this, and we're being incredibly sensitive to that perception that this is not for everybody and it's not intended to be for everybody. The Graduate Program Committee has already been tasked with the preliminary work on this, and the strategic plan has a very thoughtful, very intentional, very strategic, because it's the strategic plan, way of looking at, is this right for us? I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying I want to investigate this possibility. And if the result of our data says that it is the right thing to do, then yeah, let's do it. But if the result of this investigation says, nah, this isn't for us, then fine. Then that big rock can go over there and we'll pick up another big rock. There's no shortage of big rocks. But let's figure out if this is something that we can do. Right? It is not going to be easy. It is not Disneyland. But again, I would argue that at least the investigation of this is the right thing, the ethical thing, the responsible thing for us to do in the progression of things that we have already set up. So those are my two big rocks: marketing and branding, and investigating the possibility of program recognition. So what's next? As I stated earlier, this is not an autocracy. It's not up to me as the president. It's not up to the e-board. It's not up to the past presidents. It's not up to the fellows. This is up to us. We are AASP. This isn't you're doing this and it's not serving me. This is us. Let's turn those fingers back inwards. We are AASP. It's up to us to pick up these big rocks and move them. It's up to us to make this move forward. So my challenge to you, the time is now, the place is here. Let's get reflective. I'm going to challenge you to separate, or try to separate out, your own fears, your own ego, my own ego, your perceptions of legacy, your personal past experience and how you did it, and that's the way it should be for everybody. Let's put that stuff down and look at it from a 30,000-foot view. I've had a lot of people, in sort of processing through this, I've had a lot of people ask me about, well, why should we do this? Why should we look at program recognition? I'm going to turn that back. Why shouldn't we? Why shouldn't we look at this? Just because it's hard is not a reason not to do it. My personal professional philosophy is do the hard things. Do the hard things with good people to make an impact. This is a hard thing. And we've got to get a little bit more reflective. We've got to start looking at some self-study. We've got to get proactive and thinking about what can I do? As a student, what power do I have in this? Well, yeah, you've got a lot of power. Talk to your advisors, talk to your mentors. Ask questions about what this might look like for your program. As graduate program coordinators, ask yourself, how well are we truly doing? Is my program doing what my mission says it should be doing? Can't tell you how impactful John Amici's opening discussion was about looking at the mission statements of organizations. I literally went back to my room, looked up the mission statement of my department and said, yeah, no. Good words, we are not towing the load. We've got to step to this now. So think about how you can make small strides to make improvements around these ideas, around graduate training. If we all start doing that because we are AASP, then the organization can help us come up with best practices. This organization can help support us in that striving. But we can't expect the organization to do it for us. This is a workload that the organization can't carry by itself. We need you to be stepping to that challenge. As Ken would say, the time is now. The place is here. The reality is that we as a field, and AASP as an organization, we can do a lot. We can do a lot. We've got a lot of power. But we don't have the bandwidth or the resources to tackle everything. We can't do everything. The Ravizza-ism with the broadest application, and it's sort of like my go-to, this is my pocket Ravizza-ism, is control the controllables. And you might be looking at this picture going, what the hell does this have to do with control the controllables? You're sitting there playing chess, having a great time, and all of a sudden a pigeon comes along, knocks over all the pieces. You have a choice. You can get pissed off about that. Or you can look at the pigeon and say, yep, that happens. Control the controllables. The Ravizza-ism with the broadest application for me is this one. It is my go-to. There is a lot that we as an organization can control right now, but there's a lot that we can't. I propose that we start focusing more effectively as a group on what we have control over and putting aside the things that we don't. Let's get the things that we have control over in line first, and then we can find some more big rocks and tackle some new ones. One of my favorite, it's not a Ravizza-ism because I'm pretty sure he stole this from someone else, as we all do, quite honestly. But one of the favorite quotes that Ken would use in virtually every class, no matter what class it was a quote by Mickey Rivers, baseball player. Ain't no use worrying about the things beyond your control, because if they're beyond your control, ain't no use worrying. Ain't no use worrying about the things within your control, because if they're within your control, ain't no use worrying. Let's worry about the things that we have control over. Forget about the pigeon. Rebuild your chess set. Set the pieces back. Let's control the controllables. So in closing, I was doing so good. I will forever be grateful that Ken's is the voice in my head. As hard as it is right now to hear it, I absolutely need it. I need his wisdom. I need his voice, as I do the voice of many of the leaders and mentors in this room right now. I can only hope that I can honor his legacy, both personally and professionally, as I step into this role as the president of this organization. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.